Hey Ephraim, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's October 18th, 7 p.m. Welcome to the next level of conversation. I'm really excited to have you here tonight. We've spoken a bit before, but now that we're doing the interview, I'm really psyched that you're here. I wanted to say a couple of words about you before we got into our conversation. You're a former Navy SEAL. You were served in the United States military 6.5 years in Iraq, Afghanistan. I would say liberating that area, fighting for the U.S. I'm not sure if you recognize if you were liberating the people or what your cause was going to be when you got over there beyond fighting for the U.S. But after that time, you came back to the United States and then immediately decided to go back as humanitarian warrior to work alongside with Iraqi soldiers to help the oppressed against the ISIS terror groups. Is that correct assumption?
Yeah. That's accurate. Just one thing has to be clarified. I didn't actually serve, and that's very interesting. I didn't actually serve in Iraq at all during my time. So my first time in Iraq was actually when I got out of the military and went there. I'd fought in Afghanistan and then deployed out all around Southeast Asia. So yeah, it was kind of ironic. My first time in Iraq was as a civilian, even though I had my background as a Navy SEAL.
Right. And why Afghanistan? That why deployed there and not Iraq? Was that after the first skirmish had occurred and then you went into Afghanistan?
That's actually the time that I deployed to Afghanistan in 2014. It was actually a very interesting historical moment. At the time, so American troops pulled out of Iraq in 2011. I didn't join them. I joined the military basically that same year, early 2010. And so when I actually made it to a SEAL team and was on my first deployment in 2014, after 2.5 years of training or 3.5 years of training and selection and being sent out there on my first mission, in 2014 we had no troops in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was fighting in Afghanistan, and when we were in Afghanistan, we were actually some of the last naval special warfare guys to be out there. There's still some Green Berets that are out there doing good work. But I was with one of the last platoons of SEALs that was being assigned to the area. We were downgrading the amount of troops that we had in the region. But what was interesting about it was toward the end of our deployment, we started hearing about this new terror organization in Iraq called ISIS. And we were like, what's ISIS? Like, we never heard of that. And so we're out there fighting the Taliban, coming back to our compound, and then getting these reports and like, hey, like they just sent in a SEAL platoon into Iraq and they're dropping bombs on these guys called ISIS. And we had, no idea who they were. And then toward the end of the deployment, we started actually losing our air support. So we would say, hey man, we need an AC-130 gunship. We need some A-10s. We need a bunch of aircraft. And they say, hey, sorry, we don't have it. They're all in Iraq now. Or, the two planes that we have here are being used on other missions. And so it was really interesting. We're like, oh, we started realizing, oh man, like ISIS, that's a real deal. I mean, if they're pulling our AC-130 gunships from our missions, which are, getting pretty kinetic, we're getting into pretty gnarly gunfights, and they're sending them to Iraq, man, things had to have gone bad. And
Right.
so that was our first understanding of ISIS.
So before you got over there, and many other soldiers, soldiers or your intelligence were not aware of this group or the strength of this group or what their abilities and capabilities were and how they would eventually disrupt what was going on over there. Is that what you're saying?
I'm sure there were some intelligence assets who knew on the ground what was going on in Iraq and this
Mm-hmm.
whole new thing of ISIS that was happening. But as far as I knew, and as far as anybody else in my platoon knew, we never heard of them.
Right.
Because they were new and they were going
Yeah.
crazy in 2014.
I wanted to add what I didn't add to the front side of our discussion was that, there was a video that went viral of you when you were doing some humanitarian work when you got shot, and there was also a book written about you, or you co-authored a book with Scott McEwen, who was also a well-known author of American Sniper, which was a movie that Clint Eastwood made as well. So there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of interesting stories that have surrounded you with your time over there, your time when you came back, and your time for your decision to to go over there. I think, but one of my first questions is what preempted you to join the SEALs, which led you to your deployment in Afghanistan? Because that's a really that's a big decision. You know, we're not in a time where there's a draft. Everything's volunteer. You go off and be a Navy SEAL, which is, you know, an incredible endeavor, a very hard thing to do, and make a decision that may, you know, bring you in harm's way, which actually happened. So what was that motivation that started that?
Well, so I grew up actually here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm recording right now, and I grew up in a very interesting household. So I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household. You know, we couldn't go to movie theaters. Girls had to wear skirts. We couldn't listen to like music with like drum beats in it, stuff like that. So very, very Christian. Good folks. It wasn't a cult or anything.
It's like like Footloose, right?
Yeah, very much like Footloose. Yeah, that's a perfect example. I grew up in
no dancing.
I grew up in Footloose town. Saying yeah, right. Yeah, no talking to girls, none of that stuff.
All right.
So, but with that though, there was a big push on serving other people. That was you know, as part of our Christian faith, there was a big focus on, hey, serving other people, making the world a better place, filling the world with more peace, right? Well, then on the other hand, my father, he was actually in the Air Force, serves my entire childhood, and when after 9/11, my father was was activated to active duty service, and then sent over to Iraq in 2003. He flew C-130 Hercules transport planes. And so because of that, I was kind of aware of the military, and I was kind of very hyper aware of the wars that were going on. And right around the age of 15 or 16, I kind of realized that the I guess extreme religious side of things just wasn't going to be for me. And I knew I didn't want to go to like be a pastor or something like that. And so I started looking. I was like, well, what could I do maybe in the military? Because I can serve other people, I can help other people in that way. And so yeah, right around the age of 14 or 15 or 16, I forget exactly when it was, but I just started really getting interested in the military. I had watched Black Hawk Down, right? So I knew about Rangers, I knew about Delta Force, and so I was like, man, I'm going to go be a Ranger. So I was doing a bunch of research on Ranger stuff, and this stuff for SEALs would always pop up. You know, when you're Googling and looking at Ranger stuff. And I remember I would always tell myself, I would see the SEAL stuff in the back of my mind. I'd always say, oh, I can't do that. I couldn't do that because, you know, those guys are crazy. Like, you know, those are SEALs. Like, that's absurd. Their training's crazy. I'm not even that good of a swimmer. And, like, so the thought, I always told myself I couldn't do it. But I guess I just had an epiphany one day. And I realized, I was like, man, what kind of a soldier would I be if I was backing down from the challenge of being a SEAL because I was too afraid, or I told myself I couldn't do that? What kind of soldier, what kind of warrior would I be if I was backing down from that challenge? And so for me, I knew that the SEALs were going to be the most challenging for me. And so I counterintuitively, I was like, well, my chances of success are the lowest by going to the SEALs. So that's exactly where I'm going to go, because I want to go prove that I'm the best, and I want to work with the best guys, and I want to do the hardest and toughest missions and the most important stuff. And so yeah, right around the age of 15, I was like, well, I'm going to go do this. And then from that moment forward, there was no looking back.
So some of your initial influence was through popular culture, watching films, seeing how the military might have been portrayed through, you know, movies, etc., TV. Was that your initial influence, or is it just?
Yeah. Well, my father being in the military, he would talk to me a lot about the military stuff, and he would tell me about the soldiers. He was in the Air Force, and, you know, flew transport planes, but he would tell me about the soldiers he was transporting around, and we'd get photos from Iraq and Kuwait and these other places where he was flying around. And so I was just very aware of the military being like a very real thing. And, you know, they would always have these really cool static displays at the local airport down here in Milwaukee, where they'd bring in fighter jets and transport planes and tanks and all kinds of cool stuff. And, you know, they'd bring the community could come out and kind of climb all over the planes and look inside the tanks and helicopters. And so I was very aware of it in that sense. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, movies and you know, Band of Brothers, Black Hawk Down. Saving Private Ryan. Man, I saw those movies and I was like, man, like I would love to be one of those guys.
What was
Yes, that was
how,
definitely a big influence.
right. What how long before this interest, this spark to join, was this before 9/11? How long before that?
No, this was after 9/11.
It happened after
I
9/11.
was yeah. So I was I don't know. I think I was in fourth grade. Yeah, I was in fourth grade when 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And so because of that, there was like I definitely that was I think where a lot of my patriotism came from. I saw what happened. I didn't understand what what it meant at all. I was 9. But then 2 years later, fast forward 2 years, my dad's getting activated and going to this place called Iraq, and I'm like, well, where's that? What's that? And I'm learning about there's a war on. There's bad guys over there, and yeah. So then I was like, oh well, I mean, if other guys are going to go fight the bad guys, like, well, why not me?
So was 9/11 an influencer for you? Or was it just because
yes,
your dad went over there?
Well, as I got older and when I really started understanding what 9/11 was, it absolutely was a motivator for me. But the actual date of 9/11, I was 9 in Wisconsin.
Right.
And I was like, "Where's New York?" I
know.
really
I'm not recognizing how old I am in contrast to you. So I'm getting mixed up with the 9/11 time frame. But it's interesting to know how because I know a number of stories where people terrorist attack in New York, people sign up and they go, and they have a certain perception, and then they get over there and maybe that perception is the same or that perception may change. I don't know what it was for you. So you go through the Navy SEAL training, and then how far along after your training do you end up in Afghanistan? How long does that take?
So the training to become a SEAL, actually, so from the moment that I joined the Navy, was December 8th, 2010. The moment that I actually checked into my SEAL team after having completing was December 9th, 2012. So it was just over 2 years. But you also have to factor in I was injured for 4 months there. So it's like over a year and a half of constant training just to get to your SEAL team. Once you're at your SEAL team, you then have to go through another 18 months of pre-deploying with an actual SEAL platoon with veteran SEALs, and you start to learn all the advanced tactics. You learn your job within the unit. So whether you're a radio man or you're a sniper or you're a medic, you learn all those skill sets, and then you train as a team, and then you deploy. So from the time that I joined the military to the time that I was actually stepping on a plane going to Afghanistan was 3.5 years of just constant training.
That's a lot of training.
To go out there.
That's a lot of
that's what well, that's what it means to be in special operations, not just the SEALs. I mean, the Rangers, Green Berets, same thing, man. Lots and lots of training.
And you were a medic, right?
No, see, the funny thing is I was not a medic. I was mostly a comms guy and a JTAC, which means I controlled aircraft and called in airstrikes and things like that. But then when I got back from Afghanistan, I was able to get qualified as a sniper. And then when I went to Iraq after the military, I ended up kind of just filling in the role of medic because we had received a ton of medical training, obviously in the SEAL teams.
And when you went over to Afghanistan, I mean, nothing can prepare you for what you probably experienced. I know I can't imagine what you probably went through, but did you feel somewhat prepared to enter that realm?
When I got to Afghanistan and went out on my first mission, to be perfectly honest, I felt totally comfortable. I felt totally prepared. I was like, I got this. It wasn't like a cocky proof, we're going to kick these guys' butts. It was just, I know what to do. I've done this 1,000 times. I've loaded my rifle and packed my gear and walked out in formation 1,000 times during that 3.5 years of training, and that's why when you do get into combat, the reason why special operations forces are different is because you were trained so much that when you actually do go into combat, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I've seen this. The only thing different is now there's bullets coming back at you.
Right.
But that's, I mean, you already, you don't really act any different though. It's like, oh yeah, this is what we do. We return fire, we get to cover,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know, follow orders.
you've
Yeah,
been in the simulation 1,000 times. Now, can you relax enough to apply what you've learned in the real time event?
exactly.